Right, well, the government is expanding its centrepiece renewables program more than fivefold. It will underwrite renewables projects to boost the capacity investment scheme from 6 gigawatts of renewable energy up to 32. It's all in a bid to bolster ambitious claims to reduce carbon emissions by 43%. That will be driven very much by renewables, which needs to get to 82% by 2030. Joining me live is the Assistant Climate Change and Energy Minister, Jenny McAllister, who's not with her usual offsider, Jane Hume. She's stuck in the chamber, but I'm not stuck with you. Happy to have you in the studio. I guess the first part about this is what's stark is that you were going to well and truly miss 82% on the current trajectory. What was happening that was unexpected? Why was investment not happening at the pace you thought it would?
Well, Tom, I think the most important thing to know is that for many years we've been provided warnings about the exit of existing ageing coal-fired generators and the need to bring on new capacity to replace them. And they were warnings that were ignored by the previous coalition government. And we came to office knowing that we would need to take very significant actions to reset energy policy parameters so that we could see that investment come forward. I think in recent years we've seen some very significant international events, the war in Ukraine, constraints in supply chains, and an intensification of interest in other countries in accelerating their renewable energy transition.
So was that a competition and cost thing? The projects got a bit more expensive and the calculations on whether they're going to make a profit or not change, and that meant you need to underwrite more projects?
I think there are a number of dynamics going on in the market, one of which is accessing capital and materials for these kinds of projects, another of which is uncertainty about the overall market conditions. And for that reason, we've taken these steps to make sure that we are bringing on new capacity before these ageing generators close. And I will say that, like the coalition were warned, in their period, I think something in the order of 24 coal-fired power stations either announced a retirement date or brought forward a retirement date. There was no plan to deal with that challenge. We are now dealing with it.
So what we've heard from the Senior Minister, Chris Bowen, is the cost of this, because there's not necessarily a cost, it's an underwriting, but there's a potential cost, is commercial in confidence for now. When will we find out a potential cost? Is that after the first auction process, second? Because taxpayers deserve some transparency on this, don't they?
Look, I'll leave it to the Minister to sort of roll through the program as it rolls out. But we do need to preserve value for money for the taxpayer. We can't go to market telling people how much we expect to pay. Our interest is in running competitive auctions so that we do actually get the best possible bids from the commercial entities that are seeking to engage with us.
Okay, so what does that mean? That after the auctions are run, then we find out the potential cost for taxpayers?
Look, I'll leave the details around the implementation to the Minister, but we understand that we do need to put new policies in place to bring this generation on.
But if the issue is getting the best price, and you can't tell people here's what it'll cost, because then businesses might go, oh, we thought it was going to be more expensive than that, great. But then once the auctions are run, then there's no reason not to go public, right?
Look, I've indicated I'll leave it to Minister Bowen to make relevant updates and announcements when he sees it as appropriate.
It's a pretty core issue, though,
this,
what the cost would be. Surely this has been something discussed and you've spoken about, here's what the cost will be, when can we reveal it?
These have been all canvassed in the budget decision-making around this. And as I say, our focus is bringing on the requisite generation to replace the ageing coal-fired generators that are retiring. It's an issue that wasn't dealt with by the previous government, and it's one of the reasons that we are starting to see additional risks in the system around summer, and these are risks that the government is working to remediate.
It's been mostly welcomed by industry and experts as well, but they're saying it's probably cost neutral for the consumer, so it won't hike up power bills, but it won't bring them down. Do you still have any confidence you can get the reduction on an annual power bill that Labor promised before the election, $275, which since the election has actually gone up? Is that still a pledge you're going to fulfil?
What we do know is that as we replace the existing generation capacity in the system, renewables are the cheapest form of generation. And the more renewables we get into the system, the more downward pressure we can put on power prices.
But
The
that's different to
275 that you refer to was a modelled outcome some years ago, and it referred to an outcome in 2025. We are very confident that bringing more renewables on is the most important thing we can do to put downward pressure on
Would
prices
you
and
describe
support
that
consumers.
promise then as on track right now or unlikely?
This was a modelled outcome done some years ago in relation to a future date. We are working to remedy years of dysfunction.
So maybe the
in
modelling's out of
energy
date now, is that what you're saying?
Well, we do know nothing has changed about the core element, which is that the more renewables come into the system, the greater our capacity to put downward pressure on prices.
Okay. Senator, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.